Fellow Falcoholics, what's up? Welcome to episode 308 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin. I at Falcoholic Kevin, joined once again by my co-host Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way, back from the Hawks Stadium last week. Adnan, welcome back to the show. Hawks, dealing with their own set of injuries as the Falcons' injuries start to pile up, but some good things, early in the season from the Hawks, some bad. So, how's it going over there in Hawks land?
I mean, big win last night. The Hawks injuries make the Falcons injuries look like nothing.
Yeah,
To
which is,
the people who follow the team can attest to that for sure.
yeah.
But no, like last week, I was actually just on a work trip. It wasn't.
Oh,
It
that's
wasn't.
right. It wasn't actually the Hawks game. I don't want to get,
Yes.
I don't want to claim something that wasn't true, everyone. So
Yeah.
for the
Hey.
record, it was a work trip, yeah, it was a work trip. But we missed you. Happy to have you back as the Falcons, of course, lose a tough game to the Saints. That was not fun. 3 missed kicks from Younghoe Koo. That was not fun. 1 technically blocked. And now we get probably some bad news about several Falcons players on the injury report. We also get a somewhat intriguing special teams sighting to the practice squad, a reunion from training camp. We'll break that down. We'll talk about the injury report. Probably spend a little bit of time on Younghoe Koo because it's the hot button topic right now, and the team obviously planning to stick with him. I would think at least through the first game after the bye. We'll see how that goes. But we're going to get into all that, guys, here on the Falcoholic Live. Thanks for joining us. Like, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Leave that 5-star review in your podcast platform of choice. If you want to help us out, that really does help with reach on those podcast platforms, or so I'm told by my publisher. So if you want to make my publisher happy, and by extension me, please do those metrics because those really help us out. Thank you guys so much for that. And also, at the behest of my publisher and our wonderful sponsor, BetOnline, I got an ad read for you guys here. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting this season. BetOnline's got the earliest odds. They've even got in-game live betting options, and BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to bet on the games as they're happening, which is that's too much for me to process. I want to plan out all my props and stuff like that, well ahead of time if I'm going to do that. I remember Prize Picks last year on it. I was doing an hour of research for these Prize Picks, breaking it down on Pro Football. Okay, all these, okay, he did this for the last 3 weeks, and half the time it would miss anyway. But that's just sports betting for you. But it's interesting. But if you guys want to play it by vibes in game, BetOnline's got that now. They've also got the largest selection of odds on everything from football, college football as well, NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, MMA. You think of it, they've probably got it there at betonline.ag. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head there today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Make sure when you sign up to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to get access to the latest promotions. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Well, before we get to the injuries, I do want to get your take on the Koo situation because that is the hot button topic. It seems like at this point, in terms of action, that nothing's going to happen. The team's probably going to give Koo this game, and I would assume the game after the bye, sort of regardless of what happens. Obviously, if he kicks well in this game, that will probably extend the timeline further. And of course, we're all hoping that he can just round back into form. That would be fantastic because the team has to deal with quite a lot of dead cap with regards to Koo going forward if they have to make a change. But, what's your sort of read on the situation, and where are you at with Koo this season as he's having arguably the worst season of his career, maybe outside of his, first season in the NFL, which was not long-lived?
So, I mean, obviously, like you said, the ideal scenario is Younghoe Koo just sort of figuring it out and the Falcons not having that issue anymore moving forward, because right now it's a clear issue, and it's not just a one-game thing. It's not just a one-game slump. I remember being a little more hard on Koo than anyone else last year, in particular after that Bucks game, the one at home, where he missed 2 kicks and pretty much cost the team the game. I'm still of the mindset that Koo did cost you the division last year, because if you win that game, then the team most likely wins. I think the team would have won the division with one more win the rest of the way, which they ended up getting against the Colts. And then, we remember the struggles against the Dolphins in preseason because we were doing a watch party and not play by play during that
Definitely
game.
not play by play. Yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely some panic that came along with that game. Younghoe Koo has had a really strong career with the Atlanta Falcons. Like what we all really like Younghoe Koo. He was a great signing um, years ago, and he's had some really strong years. But I'm not like some people of the mindset that because Younghoe Koo has been really good in the past, that means that he's completely, untouchable and that he should have ironclad job security today. Uh,
Right.
to be completely honest with you, the Falcons don't owe him that. What the Falcons have owed him, they've pretty much given to him, and the Falcons have really taken care of Younghoe Koo over the years. He's earned for all those kicks, for all of that great work, Younghoe Koo has earned $17.5 million from the Falcons in cash. Like that's literally generational wealth. And the Falcons have absolutely taken care of him more than some teams have taken care of their very good kickers over the years because right now he's a top 5 paid kicker in the NFL. He made 8 million in cash in 2022, like in earnings that season. I looked it up on Spotrac. So no, I don't think that Younghoe Koo should just be given free reign for the entire rest of the season, for the rest of his contract, uh, just because of what he's done in the past. Younghoe Koo having, you know, done so well in 2022 isn't going to help you right now at all.
Right.
I do think that he has earned some good grace and some leeway, and he's pretty much used it up in not getting cut up to this point.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't have that grace and leeway, he probably would have been gone after that Saints game. This is the first game where he's actually cost you, but all season long, he has been honestly, after week 4, he's easily been the worst kicker in the NFL. And he has been he has been overall one of the worst kickers in the NFL this season.
Yeah.
Like, and the statistics are he's 31st out of 33 qualified kickers in field goal percentage at 70%. And since week 4, so he had a great first 4 weeks. Since week 4, he is at 53.3%, which if you extrapolate that across an entire season, there has not been a single kicker that has kicked that low of a field goal percentage since 2003, Owen Pochman with the San Francisco 49ers. So no,
Yeah.
this isn't just one of those, oh, well, he had a bad game and now, people are frustrated and now, people are calling for his head and we're being short-sighted. I'm not calling for his head yet, but I completely understand the frustration that a lot of people are, facing because I mean, he literally has one job. He cost you a Saints game, a huge divisional matchup this week by not doing that one job. And yeah, he's the what fourth highest paid kicker in terms of cap hit, and he's the third worst kicker in the NFL. The only kickers who are worse statistically from a field goal percentage standpoint are Braden Navarson of Green Bay and Greg Zuerlein of the Jets. And, I have no idea how the Jets are still hanging on to Zuerlein.
They put him on
Um,
IR. So
yeah,
they didn't have to. I guess they just felt bad for him or something. I don't know. But
yeah,
yeah.
but basically, like I'm of the mindset that if he misses another kick against Denver inside 55, if it's over 55, then you know what, it is what it is. But inside 55, if he misses another kick or two, I'm ready to call it. Like I'm ready to pull the plug at that point. And like no, I don't think that that's a short-sighted mindset at all. Like he is now beginning to cost you games.
Yeah. No, that certainly seems to be the case. And the other thing is, like you mentioned, he has earned leeway that most other kickers won't get. That doesn't mean that he's untouchable, and I don't believe the Falcons view it that way either. But at the same time, like the kicking position is one where you really have to perform, and you're even the best ones aren't going to get a whole season to fix it, because even though he is one of the highest paid kickers in the NFL, the dead cap from moving on from him is not prohibitive in any way. And in fact, the Falcons, I believe, would save 5 million something next year, 3 to 5 million, depending on what they do with that contract. And that's not a huge amount of money, but that is like, I mean, that can add up with other moves, certainly. I mean, that can be 5, vet min contracts to help fill out your roster in a year where you might be tight. But ultimately, like the first thing that the Falcons are going to do is give him through the bye, I imagine. Like, because I don't really see them making a move. Even if he has another bad game against the Broncos, I mean, if it's like catastrophic like the last game, then I guess we don't know for sure. But I can't really see any sort of move happening before the bye. And I feel like they're probably going to give him the game after the bye, just no matter what. But I think if we see another really bad game, which hopefully we won't. I mean, he's only had a handful of games this bad in his entire career. So hopefully we won't. But if that were to happen, you imagine that there's a kicker brought in during the bye week to start bringing in some competition before anything gets changed. But it's not a great situation. You certainly don't like to see it with such a beloved player here in Atlanta.
Yeah, and I do want to address, I think Joe said that you can't just grab a guy off the street and expect result. Yeah, you can. Like, you literally, there are more good kickers than there are NFL teams. You can easily grab a guy off the streets and have him kick 80%, which is around league average, which is, would be an enhancement to what we've seen with Koo. I mean, the San Francisco 49ers did it twice. Jake Moody got injured. They signed Matthew Wright. He went 2 for 2. He got injured the very next game, hurt his shoulder. Then they signed Anders Carlson, who went 5 for 5 after that. Now Carlson is on the Jets practice squad. Like, kicker isn't quarterback. You can easily find a kicker off the streets who will come in and who will give you, around 80% or better when it comes to field goal percentage, extra point percentage. Like, we saw it with the Falcons too. For those who are, kind of weird saying those who are old enough to remember 2008, but there are some younger viewers. But Jason Elam was coming off of a Pro Bowl season in 08, and Chris Carter mentioned it in the chat. 2009 had a really rough go of it for a stretch there. I still remember the game he lost us. It was in Carolina. He missed at least 2 kicks that game. The Falcons, I think, had enough, pulled the plug, and brought in Matt Bryan off the street the next game. For the next game, we remember it was all history from there. Obviously, like, I'm not rooting for Koo's downfall, his demise, but yeah, I do think it's ridiculous to sort of just, be like, all right, we're just giving him the whole year, no matter what. Like, this team is competing right now. You have a divisional win. You have, potentially a playoff run to go on. And at the end of the day, if you have a kicker who's not doing his job, all of that can go up in flames. That's my biggest concern right now.
Yeah, exactly. And, this team, I know they are in a comfortable spot at this moment, but we could really see the Falcons' lead in the division evaporate quite quickly, especially if the Bucs just start getting on a roll here, because they have the easiest schedule of any team remaining. They're probably going to be favored in every single one of their games the rest of the way. Maybe not the Chargers game, but that's the only one I think that they would not be favored in. That doesn't mean they're going to win them all. I mean, everyone's going to scuffle here and there, but the Falcons don't have this mammoth sort of, they can't afford to be missing kicks and losing games on missed kicks. Like, they're not in that good of a position. So that will sort of force their hand eventually if Koo can't get back to it. But, at this point, they're going to give him a chance, and they should. He's earned that. But they can't really afford to wait too much longer, like, especially if they were to lose on Sunday. And we'll talk about that game, obviously, later in the show. But, this is a tough game. They've got 2 tough games coming out of the bye. It's not...
Corey, also, I'm sorry, I called him Chris Carter. Corey Carter.
Yep. Hall of Fame receiver.
Hall of Fame wide receiver in the chat room.
Wow, shout out. But yeah, it's just this team, like, they could very, not easily, I would say, but it's not out of the question that they I believe their next 3 are at the Broncos, which not an easy game. Then Chargers, then Vikings, right? So um, this team is that those are like 3 of the hardest games left on their schedule. It's not. It's probably within the realm of possibility that they could win one of those 3 games or none of them. I mean, I think they'll win at least one, and that would preserve their lead over the Bucks no matter what else happens. But like, they can't really be scuffling. Like, and these games are going to be tough enough without a bunch of missed kicks thrown in there. But given where the Falcons are, they've got a little bit of time to get it right. Clearly, the team really likes him and trusts him for the clutch kicks that he's delivered to them in the past. I think they're right to trust him to an extent. We just have to see it play out, and hopefully we'll see that soon. Because even a kicker with as much positive history as Koo is not going to get more than a few games of leash here. Like, it's just not, you can't really do that. So
No chance.
Yeah, it's gonna have to happen soon for Koo.
Yeah, and I mean, look, that's my. If it was just a one game thing, if he was just dynamite, and then he just had a rough go of it this past weekend, it's like, okay, slump, bad days happen, slumps happen, but this is a bit extended right now. And to be completely honest with you, he almost cost you both of those Bucks games this year as well. Like, if the team didn't figure it out and just rally at the end of that Thursday night game against the Bucks, I guess Koo did sort of redeem himself with that 54-yarder at the end of regulation, but they were only in that position because he missed one and had one blocked earlier in the game. And then he missed another one against the Bucks a couple weeks later. Like, this entire season could have been looking completely different because of Koo up to this point. But, he got very fortunate that the team, sort of figured it out and, rallied despite it, because right now you're sort of winning despite him. Like, you're not winning because of him, or you're not seeing him do his job. And that, I guess I'm a little less forgiving when it comes to kickers, because you literally only have one job. Like, you don't have to know anything regarding the playbook, unless you're like doing like a fake play, which the Falcons don't do any fake special teams plays. But like, you have one job and you're getting paid very well to do that job. And right now, if you're not doing that job, that's something that can really sort of light everything on fire that you're doing, because every NFL team is just looking for that marginal advantage over another NFL team, and it's a huge disadvantage if you're just leaving points on the board. He leads the league in missed field goals. Like, you've left 21 points just completely on the board with 7 missed field goals over the past 5 weeks. Like, that's a ridiculously catastrophic number.
Yeah, it's definitely not good. And you can't tolerate that for very long. That this team isn't good enough to survive that long term. So we'll obviously hope that he can get out of this little rut that he's in and bounce back and be the guy that we've seen nail kicks for this team for many years. But he's on the knife's edge right now. But if there's anyone that has earned the trust, it's him. We'll hope that he can take advantage because the Falcons really can't afford anything else.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. I mean, I hope he goes out there and just goes like 2 for 2, 3 for 3 against the Broncos, and we can sort of put this to rest right now going into the bye week. But yeah, it's to sort of insinuate that Koo isn't completely on the hot seat right now, I think would be rather ridiculous. And I know what Raheem Morris said in the press conference. It's his job right now to build Koo up as much as he possibly can. But if the front office isn't at least looking at possible replacements right now, they're not doing their job.
yeah, I'm sure that they are doing work on that. And we'll see what ends up happening over time. But like you said, we'll just hope for the best, because Koo's is a fan favorite for a reason. I certainly have enjoyed having him here, and I hope we can have him here for a long time. And in the past, he's been great for us. So that's what we'll hope for. But at this point, it's sort of up in the air what Q's future is with the team. It's up to him at this stage. So we'll hope that he can get it done. But yeah, moving on to the injury report, a much lighter topic. Let's talk about the injury report. We did get a lot of updates today. Obviously, it's not great, but the clarity is important, right? This Falcons team, a lot of guys on the injury report today. It was another walkthrough. So this team clearly sort of trying to let guys rest a little bit. Obviously, this is now 11 straight weeks into the season. They're going to have their bye next week. That'll be helpful for a lot of these guys. But walk through again today. So 5 players did not participate. Charlie Werner has a concussion. That's not great. He did not participate in the walkthrough. We've heard that it's bad news on Taquan Graham with his pectoral injury. He did not participate. I think the belief is obviously that that's a torn pec and a season-ending injury. We'll obviously see what they do there. James Smith-Williams has already been ruled out for this week by Raheem Morris with a tibia injury. I don't know how serious that is, if it's IR or something else, but not great. And then Antonio Hamilton and D. Alford are both not participating either. D. Alford with a hamstring, Antonio Hamilton with a pec. So a lot of guys there that are dealing with injuries. But yeah, I mean, the big news, obviously, that Taquan Graham could potentially be out for the season, and James Smith-Williams at least already ruled out for this week, which of course is bad news. But the Falcons haven't gotten amazing contributions from either of those guys, but I would say James Smith-Williams was one of their only reliable run defending edge rushers, and Taquan Graham was a part of the rotation that wasn't amazing, but he certainly wasn't the biggest problem with the rotation. So
Look, I'm not gonna lie. I've actually been. I know that the Falcons have had their injuries, but I've been very pleasantly surprised up to this point at just sort of how healthy they've been, especially when compare it to some of the other teams and when you consider the grind of an NFL schedule. Like, I know, you had Drew Dahlman lost for a little bit. I think Caleb McGarry's injury wasn't as bad as it seemed. Troy Anderson was really the only starter that's been out for a while. So, the Falcons, this is the first time where they're really sort of dealing with, bit of a bigger injury bug, and it's coming at the cost of some of their depth players. Like, it just has to be a next man up mentality. Nobody's going to feel sorry for you with these injuries, and the next man up might be Brandon Dorlus with Taquan Graham down. And it's now's the time for Brandon Dorlus to step up and showcase why the team took him early on in day 3. And it's an opportunity for him to kick the door down a little bit, because if he has a really good performance throughout the rest of the season, if Taquan Graham is out for the entire year, then he'll go into next year as a guy who will get bona fide playing time, if not a guy who may be an outright starter depending on what you do regarding cuts in free agency. But it's one of those where it sucks that Taquan is he's gone maybe for the year, but there's always a bit of a silver lining and a bit of an opportunity with it, in that you have a young guy who now will get his legitimate chance, and it's do or die time for Dorlus in his rookie year. As for James Smith-Williams, good run stopper, but it's not one of those injuries where, I mean, either one of these are one of those injuries where it's really catastrophic to your season. As much as I hate to say, you'd rather they not get injured. You'd rather they be healthy. You'd rather have the bodies, have the depth, but it's just an opportunity for other guys to step up. And, among the, sort of good news on the injury front is it does seem like Drew Dahlman will be ready to go this week. I think he may have been ready to go last week, but they decided to err on the side of caution. You will have Drake London. I thought that London was going to miss last week with the hip pointer, but he ended up playing through it, and he'll be able to play through it this week as well. And then you have a bye week to rest up and to get to 100%. But yeah, it's you hate injuries, but neither of these injuries are really like catastrophic, like blows to your defense.
Yeah, it's true. It hurts the rotation, but like you said, you know, the rotation wasn't that great to begin with. So either this causes a catastrophe or maybe the next man up does something. I mean, we saw Khalid Kareem have to come in and play a little bit, 9 snaps, ends up having, I think, 3 run stops on 9 snaps, which like that's efficient right there. That's a nice thing from a guy coming off the practice squad. So maybe he can step in if needed a little bit more. If James Williams is out for extended time with Taquan Graham, it sounds like at this point now with multiple interior defensive line injuries, Brandon Dorlus will be finally getting a chance to play or
So
at least be
that's what it
active.
took, huh?
Yeah,
That's what
that's
it
what it took. About 5 injuries, and then we can get our 4th round pick on the field. But obviously, a lot of people are excited to see Brandon Dorlus. I know you've been clamoring it for a while. I think a lot of people have been clamoring for it for a while.
Let's see what the kid's got.
Yeah,
He's a guy who had a lot of pressures in college. You damn sure need the pass rush help. The pass rush can't be much worse than what we've seen so far. And maybe Dorless can be a spark for you on the interior. I mean, the team has what, 9 sacks in 10 games? Like
it's
that's
not
pathetic.
great. It's not great, Adnan. Yeah, that's a bad number. I think you should
It's
probably have at
really
least 20 sacks by now.
the
But yeah,
Patriots had as many sacks last week as you've had all season.
yep. Oh man, and they're not likely to get any more this week against the NFL's number 1 pass protecting offensive line. So,
The
um,
Broncos are look. I brought up this Broncos game before during our predictions, game by game predictions, and I was scared of this game when we thought that the Broncos were going to suck.
yeah,
Like this has all the makings of a letdown game, just by way of schedule, by way of logistics. You're coming off of a highly emotional game in New Orleans, which you just barely lost. And I mean, it was always going to be a highly emotional game in New Orleans either way. You have a bye week after this week, and you're having to travel out west into the altitude. Even if the Broncos weren't good, this would have been a tough test. And it turns out that the Broncos are actually a pretty good football team. They should have beaten the Chiefs last week,
yeah.
but
The
they're
Chiefs
still
can't be
five.
beat. They're
Yeah,
protected by black magic, clearly. So, yeah,
I mean, yeah, you're 5-5. Or they're 5-5. Bo Nix looks much better than I thought he would. Their defense is lights out. Their offensive line is very, very good. Seems like we'll get a lot of Audric Estime. He seems to be taking over that, backfield role in Denver. Cortland Sutton has woken up. Like this is gonna be a really difficult game, and I'm worried about a letdown. I'm worried that the guys may be looking forward to that bye week a little bit, and it's going to be up to the coaching staff to sort of ensure that that's not the case.
yeah. I mean, the Falcons like could afford to lose one of these 2 games, and I assumed it was going to be the Broncos game. Unfortunately, they blew the Saints game, so now this game becomes a little bit more important because you really don't want to go into the bye on a 2-game losing streak. Like you really don't want to do that. To be 6-3 with at least one really winnable game and one tough game, and to lose both, like that's not good juju. Now, obviously, you still have an opportunity to rebound after the bye, but and you have a lead, so you've got some room to spare. At the same time, this is a tough spot, and this is a game that now you kind of have to win more than you had to before. But
Like
yeah, it's
looking at the Bucks are on their own bye week, but coming out of it, they get the Giants, Panthers, and Raiders. Like this division can tighten up very, very quickly, very, very soon, especially if you lose this game. It this lead could be gone very fast if you don't really sort of get it together. And it sucks. Like, man, that Saints game sucks for so many reasons
yeah,
because you did enough to win that game. You should be at 7-3 right now. And we should be looking at this as okay, we're not even having to focus on the Bucks that much because they're so far below us. And we can sort of focus on chasing down the Eagles/Commanders for that 2 seed. But instead, now you lose this week, and all of a sudden it becomes a dogfight in the NFC South all over again.
Yeah, it's it's not great. It's a rough spot to be in, and I think, they need to find a way to win this game. And it is a bad matchup, like you mentioned. It is a tough spot for this team to be in, to have to go on the road to Denver and win. In the ultimate, like looking back at this game at the end of the season, we'll probably say this is one of the least important games because it's a non-conference game. It's on the road. Like this is one of the games you can afford to lose. It's just like in the context of the season, it takes on more importance because I mean, I don't know. Maybe they lose this game and then they go into that bye week at 6-5 and they take it really seriously because now they're probably feeling a little bit more like, oh, maybe we're not as good as we thought we were. We might need to be a little bit more aggressive in making some changes. Maybe that would be good for them. I don't know.
I'm
Not
looking
that I
at the
want them to
Bucks.
lose, for the record. I think they would be much better to have that conversation after a win. But
I'm looking at the Bucks schedule ROS. If lose this game against Denver, you'll be what, 2.5 or 1.5 above them. Let's say they beat the Giants next week and you're on a bye week. I don't think it's far fetched to assume that the Bucks are going to beat the Giants. Brandon Double seems to be on the hot seat in New York right now. You'd be essentially 2 games up because you have the tiebreaker, so 1 game up and the tiebreaker. The Bucks, after that Giants game, which they'll be favored in, if you count that Giants game that I just mentioned, they're going to be favored in 6 of their last 7 games.
yeah, maybe the
Like,
Chargers is the only one they're not going to be
yeah, the
favored in.
Chargers is the only one, and it's in LA, and hopefully Jim Harbaugh can get it done for us over there. But yeah, like other than that, Bucks, Panthers, Raiders, we mentioned it. The Cowboys with Cooper Rush, the Panthers again, and the Saints at home. And I mean, like you may have to hold off but like you will need to win some games down the stretch to really sort of hold off the Bucks if you really want to win this division. Like this division is by no means wrapped up at all. And losing that Saints game, even though the Bucks lost to the Niners last week, you've sort of opened the door a little bit at this point when you should have been completely shutting it. You should have, gone into it with the mentality of, win in New Orleans, beat the Broncos, and then you don't have to worry about the Bucks probably at all moving forward. But man, like it could be rough down the stretch. Like this division is by no means won.
No, no, that they have to finish strong. I mean, I think that's kind of goes without saying that they're going to have to find a way to win some games here. But the Falcons don't have the most daunting schedule either. I think people are just maybe getting a little too confident after the strong start because the Bucks have the easy way going forward and the Falcons do not. So the Falcons are going to have to actually try and actually win some games here to get this division. They obviously did. The fact that they swept the Bucks and built that lead over them where the Bucks now have to get in front of them, that's probably going to be their saving grace, right? That the Bucks are just going to have a hard time winning more games than the Falcons, more than likely.
I
If
mean,
the Bucks,
hopefully.
yes, I think ultimately, like, the Bucks could realistically tie Atlanta at like 10-7 or something like that. I think them getting to 11 wins at this point is probably not going to happen, whereas the Falcons, they only got to win 4 games to get that 10-win number. So the Bucks have to win 6 of their last 7. So I don't. I think the Falcons will probably get kind of bailed out by that, even if they don't finish as strong as we hope. But we'll see. Like, they haven't played a defense as good as Denver's since week 1. I mean, week 3, if depending on, I think the Chiefs are certainly in that conversation of the top 5 defenses. But I mean, they haven't really been tested by a defense in quite a while now.
Yeah, I mean that Broncos. I would actually even put the Broncos defense above the Chiefs. Like that defense is nasty, and it starts with their all-world cornerback, or arguably the best cornerback in football right now, Patrick Surtain. I think, given Drake London's, the fact that Drake London isn't at 100%, they're probably going to plant Surtain on him. We could see London taken away a little bit in this game, and that's going to make it all the more important for Kyle Pitts to have a really good game, all the more important for Darnell Mooney, who's been, brilliant lately. to also have a good game. So I feel like this is one of those where Atlanta's sort of secondary receivers are going to really have to step up. And obviously, everything is going to start with Bijan Robinson on offense. Robinson was spectacular against the Saints. I love what Zach Robinson has started doing with Bijan the past few weeks of really, sort of starting to feed him. I know, like, we all like Tyler Algier, but I've never been of the mindset that the Falcons should be splitting snaps and making this a 1A, 1B thing between Robinson and Algier. I really like Algier as a change of pace back. I like Algier being in the role he's been in, in the past couple of games, but this offense needs to run through Bijan like as sort of a bit of a bell cow, and then have Algier come in and deliver some body blows. But yeah, Broncos run defense is also pretty good too. So it's not going to be an easy one. Like if I was a betting man, I probably would not bet on the Falcons this week. But who knows? Maybe they get it together, and maybe this game against the Saints was a bit of a wake up call for them.
Yeah, I hope so. Um, it the Saints game they really should have won. I think we know that. They outplayed that team. The Saints, like, honestly, like, the Falcons slept on that team in the first half and it bit them. They played well enough in the second half to take that game over. Except for the, Alvin Kamara touchdown that was dropped. But I think a lot of people have just collectively decided to forget that ever happened. I have not forgotten.
Yeah, that was when that happened. I was just thinking of Saquon in week 2. I'm like, there's no way that this team is going to get away with it again, and they didn't get away with it again. But man, like, Alvin Kamara catches that 99 times out of 100. Like, let's be honest. But yeah, it was a really rough first half, and you got toasted by Marquez Valdez-Scantling in the year 2024 somehow. They dominated you with big plays. Kamara was doing his thing, and man, it was that's a game where you really want to have it back, man. Like, for so many reasons. And yeah, I mean, I get it. The Falcons' schedule isn't as daunting either, but after the Broncos, coming off of the other end of the bye, is a really good Chargers team as well. So,
Yep.
Unfortunately, I could envision a scenario where the Bucs are already tied with you in a couple weeks, but I will give the Falcons the edge in that Chargers game just because of logistics.
Right.
They're coming off a Monday night game, having to go from LA to Atlanta. The Falcons are coming off a bye week. So, we'll get to that game when we get to it. Right now it is the Broncos, but man, like, Broncos are a really underrated football team. I really like what they're doing over in Denver right now. I really like what they have going on, and I mean, Bo Nix. I mean, I'll throw my hands up and say I was wrong about Bo Nix, at least in his rookie year. I thought he would struggle a lot more this year, but he's definitely gotten the job done. And unfortunately, I don't think the Falcons are going to be able to rattle him with their daunting pass rush.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Falcons are probably going to have to win another shootout here. Like, I just don't really trust the Falcons defense at all. They've been playing better against the run. Obviously, they've gotten my boy Eddie Goldman more involved, and I think that's helped in that regard. But ultimately, I think this Falcons defense is just very vulnerable, and Bo Nix is exactly the quarterback to take advantage of their weaknesses. He's very good at evading pressure. He can run. He's actually leading the NFL in rushing yards among rookie quarterbacks, more than Jaden Daniels. And the Falcons don't have Troy Anderson, and Nate Landman looks like he's stuck in the mud. Like, he's going to take off and run for big yardage. I think we can all see that happening. But, it's going to depend on, can the Falcons create some turnover? Like, we've seen this Broncos team be susceptible to getting blown out. It's happened a couple times. They can kind of have a cascading series of failures. And we saw, like, the Ravens offense was just sort of like too good for them, and they kind of overwhelmed them. But this defense is really good. If they can keep stuff in front of them, they've played a lot better against the run since early in the season, where they were basically like the worst run defense in the NFL. They're still vulnerable there. I do think that like, if you have a good enough run game, you can run on them. And that may be where the Falcons have to take this, because I'm not super convinced that the Falcons passing game, like, you don't want Kirk Cousins dropping back 50 times against this defense. It's not going to go
No,
well for him. So, um,
that's just begging for 2 fumbles at that point because Kirk
yeah,
Cousins apparently fumbles every time he gets hit these days.
it seems
That's
like it.
that's another thing. Like I get it. Some of these blindside sacks aren't good, and it is up to the pass protection. But man, there's been so many fumbles, like so many fumbles in recent weeks, and I mean one of them pretty much cost you a chance with Chase Young sack toward the end of the game. It cost you your timeout, and it really sort of cost you an extra like 10 yards, even despite that sack. So hopefully Cousins can. I know he's not the most mobile guy. I mean, he's probably the least mobile quarterback in the NFL right now.
Hey,
But like he has got to hold on to the football, man. Like he has
yeah.
got to, at the very least, when you take that sack, like you take the sack, you lose the yardage, live to fight another down. But you cannot be putting the ball on the ground, especially against this team.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can't really afford turnovers against this team because they can overwhelm you just as quickly as you can overwhelm them. And I think their offense is still in progress, but I think Bo Nix has gotten a lot better. So you can't really depend on this team like self-destructing or anything offensively. They're not this great offense, but they're good enough, and I don't think the Falcons' defense is good enough to kind of hold them in check either. So it'll be really interesting to see how they actually match up, how the Falcons handle, what the Broncos are going to want to do, which of course is run the ball and then hit deep shots. Um,
I think it'll be a big Darnell Mooney game. Like I
yeah,
think this is going to be a very, very important game for Darnell Mooney to really, you know, go early and often. And I won't say I can envision this being Darnell's best game because we saw that first Bucks game. He was absolutely unbelievable there. But I think Darnell Mooney's other than obviously Bijan's always the key guy, but I think Darnell is really going to be the key guy for your offense in this game because I'm just sort of envisioning them taking Drake London away with Surtain. And like I said, it's going to be very important for the secondary guys to really have a strong performance, more so than in regular weeks.
yeah, I agree. I think like this is definitely a game where the Falcons' myriad receiving options will be beneficial for them because the Broncos, like, they're built to take down teams that have one receiver, like a star receiver. Um, and the Falcons obviously will miss Drake London. Like, he's been especially like their short conversions. We saw the Saints like double him and really work hard to take Drake London out of the short game. And the Falcons, adapted to that by trying to hit Darnell Mooney on these like 10 to 15-yard routes and barely missed a lot of those plays, which, that's part of the difference in that game, obviously. But, I think the Falcons can survive. Like they can survive if Drake London is sort of focused on, but they'll have to be like more on it that they were last week against the Saints. I think they were kind of caught off guard by how much man the Saints were running. This is not, the Saints are not a team that ran a lot of man coverage prior to last week. They're one of the more zone heavy teams, obviously, but they switched it up like drastically. And we're like, okay, we're going to play a bunch of man and force the Falcons to beat us over the top. Of course, the Falcons did beat them over the top several times, just ended up missing those kicks and struggled kind of in short yardage. Hopefully, they'll be kind of better prepared for the man coverage they're going to face this week. And the Broncos don't have that like elite safety duo that they have had in years past.
I wonder why.
Yeah, one of those guys, no longer there. So you can test them a bit more, but the Broncos are going to really, like, if the Falcons were teams that like want to march down the field kind of methodically, like the Chiefs, the Broncos would really kind of handled the Chiefs' attack in that way. They kept everything in front of them. I think the Falcons' ability to threaten deep will help them, and their ability to run the ball will help them a lot. Bijan's so dynamic. I think, like we saw with the Ravens, like they had trouble handling Derrick Henry in that two faceted run game. I think the Falcons, especially if we can get Drew Dahlman back this week, which that's another thing on the injury report, Drew Dalman full practicing again. Um, it sounds like there's some quote unquote like hurdles he has to clear first, which I don't know exactly what that means. I assume it's conditioning related, but maybe we get Drew Dalman back this week because like Ryan Newsel has honestly been fine. It's just I think the run blocking is where he's just very inconsistent, and we'll see missed blocks regularly, and Bijan has to kind of make stuff happen to get out of there. That's kind of where Drew Dalman obviously is so good, is he's one of the best run blocking centers in the NFL. So maybe his return can kind of unlock the consistency in the run game that we just haven't really been able to get much this year. I mean, it's been explosive, but also just prone to tackles for loss, unfortunately. So
yeah, and I mean, maybe I keep saying it, maybe they start running Bijan on the inside a little bit, but
they've done it a bit,
man,
It's
they
happened
really like
some.
that outside
Yeah.
zone. They really spam that outside zone with Bijan. I mean, it worked against the Saints, but a lot of that working is just Bijan like being incredible and making a play. Like that touchdown run was just, it was just such an incredible play by him individually. And I mean, the assignments were there. The O lineman got a head on a head, a hat on a hat, and they did their jobs. But man, he did a hell of a job of cutting back, hitting that hole, and then shaking off two defenders. But man, like he can run inside. You can use Bijan on the inside runs. Like he's very good at that too.
He
I
is.
feel like I'm just preaching to deaf ears at this point.
Yeah, for the record, I believe, like, we all know he can run inside. It's not. I really don't think it's much of a question. I think it's just how much are they willing to run inside. It seems to be the question. They have done it more lately, but I think they should embrace it like what the Rams and the 49ers have done. I think they can find success there, and I think when they do that, they'll start to realize that they could have one of the NFL's best rushing attacks, which I think they should. And that can really help them against teams that are going to be able to slow down the passing attack. I think if this offense can really unlock the consistency of the run game, really stress out the interior of defenses, then I think that's where you see this offense take off and become that like elite, attack. Right now, I would say they're good, like top 10, like better than above average, but not quite very good to elite yet. And I think unlocking the run game and becoming consistent there, that's kind of the key, I think, to taking that next step. And, beating a defense like the Broncos certainly would be, especially if you can have a good day offensively, that would be another step towards proving that you are one of the NFL's best offenses. Because what do we see the Ravens do to this Broncos defense? Blew them out of the building, right? So if you're good enough, you can find success against any defense, and they're going to have to find a way, because this is not going to be a cakewalk. It's going to be the hardest defense they've had to go against in many, many weeks. So,
yeah, it's I mean, Robert Kelly's right. Maybe it's a Justin Simmons revenge game. We saw him get a pick on Pat Mahomes earlier this year. Maybe, he goes out there and intercepts Bo Nix in this one. Like, one interception could be huge. One turnover could be huge. And I mean, yeah, like, I don't know. Like, it's going to be hard. Like, this is
yeah.
this is going to be a really tough one for the offense, and not through any fault of their own. I just think Denver's defense is just they're just them. Like they are. They are very, very strong, and I know the Ravens blew them out, but don't think the Falcons' offense has Lamar Jackson.
They do not. Our defense has Lamar Jackson now. So
yeah, we have Lamar. Yeah,
we got Lamar. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that.
If anything, when it comes to like quarterback rush ability, the Falcons have the like 180 exact opposite of Lamar Jackson in their backfield.
We did see that one Kirk Cousins scramble. So
that was their one of the year. Like that they were saving that to surprise a defense one time during the year. Came during a perfect time against the Bucs.
It was necessary. Yeah.
And then the very next play, they had the one Kirk Cousins sneak of the entire season.
Yep. Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. But yeah, it's a tough game. I hope they can pull it off, because if not, well, there'll be bad vibes going into this bye week. No doubt about it.
Vibes. Yeah, we'll be talking about how the team is mid, because I mean, they'll be 6-5. That's a pretty mid record.
I think they're pretty mid as it stands right now, but like they
They're
could be better than mid. I think it's like, you know, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about them. They feel like a pretty like average overall team. They've got a good offense and a bad defense, and to me, that's average. And maybe that's okay for where they are this year. Like maybe an average team that can make the playoffs in a bad NFC South. Like if you told me that this team makes the playoffs and wins the NFC South, I probably wouldn't have cared too much about like how they looked doing it, as long as they gave us some hope. So maybe that's good enough, But I don't blow this lead. Like don't blow this. What it was a 3-game lead you had at one point in the NFC South. Don't do that. Don't blow this and miss the playoffs again, because fans will never come back. Like, you'll have to be like 10-0 before fans will buy in again.
Yeah, I won't lie.
If
I'm to the point where if they miss the playoffs this year, I'll personally be calling for some changes when it comes to the front office. When it comes to, I mean, Raheem Morris isn't going anywhere. He signed a 5-year contract. But yeah, I think Terry Fontenot's job is going to depend on the Falcons holding on to this lead.
Yeah. I certainly hope that they can, and I believe that they will, for the record. Like, I think they'll get to 10 wins, maybe 11 if they get lucky in one of these games. But that's a step in the right direction, and this is they won't call it a rebuild, but it's a retooling team. I think they clearly, we talked about this in the offseason. It's clearly more future focused than anyone is admitting. You look at the trade deadline. Like if this team was trying to go all in or really push it this year, they would have made a move. They didn't, and I think they were right not to. Because I don't think this team is good enough to really compete in the NFC. I think they're good enough to maybe win a playoff game, which that's great. But this team is very much a work in progress, and the new coaching staff, the new offense, like we've seen some positive steps. Let's see them finish strong. That's what we're kind of waiting to see now. But got a couple questions real quick we can get to. We got you. Okay, hold on. I don't want to butcher this. Younghoe Kim, I believe, is the name, with the $2. Thank you. Saying even 55 plus Koo should be able to make it. Well, he did make a 58, which is sad because it's like he hit his career long kick and then he went on a slump. It's so tragic. Because at that point we were like, wow, maybe this kicking change is really going to pay dividends for him. But yeah, I mean, yes, you should expect your kicker, I think, to hit probably 55 reliably at this point.
Yeah. I was being generous when I said inside 55, but yeah, it's like in today's NFL, like kickers are just up to 60 even. They're just nailing it. Like we are in this golden era of like kickers. I was watching the Lions and Texans game, and you had Bates and Fairbairn just trading like, high 50s kicks. I know Fairbairn missed like a 57-yarder, but man, like these kickers are special. Like this is an incredible era right now. And yeah, you're at a complete disadvantage if you have a kicker, missing even low 50-yarders at this point.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think up to 55, you have to expect your kicker to make that pretty reliably. And I think once you get into the 50s, you're looking at like probably 70 to 80% for the best kickers. But like under 50, that needs to be 90+%. I think we can all agree on that. That's just kind of the expectation these days in the NFL. Like, and I think honestly, like I'd rather have a kicker that's going to hit, 95 up to 50 and then only be able to go to like 55, 56 than a kicker that can hit like 62, but is like 80%, overall otherwise. And like, I'd rather have the reliability and the accuracy than the leg. Because I think when you get to that like 58 plus range, like you should probably just be going for it. Like you should probably just be going for it at that point. Like you really shouldn't be putting that in your kicker's hand. And like if you're willing to try to kick the field goal there, you should be willing to try to hit a 4th down too. I mean, like it's not like your field position is going to be any worse if you don't get the 4th down. So, but that's just my opinion. But we'll see. We'll hope, obviously, that he can turn it around still. Got Jason Gaines with the $2. Thank you, Jason. Said, to help our injury depleted linebacking core, like to see the Falcons put in a waiver claim for ex-Finns linebacker David Long Jr. Long was voted by his teammates to be a team captain in Miami. Started 6 out of 8 games. Makes this a surprising cut. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like he kind of got hurt, and then Anthony Walker came in and played great. So I think the Dolphins just wanted to save some money. And then the Seahawks also, I think, claimed like Tyrell Dodson the Dolphins claimed Tyrell Dodson from the Seahawks because they have, I think, the number 2 waiver claim priority or something like that. So that was nice for them. But yeah, for the same token, like why the Falcons didn't have a chance to get Dodson, if you told me that the Falcons tried to get Dobson on waivers, I would believe you, but they have like the 23rd waiver claim, so that was probably never going to happen. Same thing could happen with David Long. Like pretty much any other, like 20 other teams could put in a claim for David Long, and if they do, the Falcons don't have a chance to get him. So just keep that in mind. And also, it may also be a situation where because he had a contract, like if you claim him, you have to take the contract. If you let him clear waivers, then you can sign him to whatever you want. So it may be that he does clear waivers because of his contract, in which case the Falcons have as good a chance of anyone else of signing him. But we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be upset to bringing in a guy that was definitely starting caliber going into this season. The Falcons are kind of low on linebacker options, even though apparently, according to Raheem Morris, they are expecting Troy Anderson to play. I hope he's looking better than he did last week. He did not look healthy at all. So the other good news, of course, Mike Hughes not going to miss any significant time with the neck injury, which whenever you hear neck injury, you always fear like, oh no, like is this like season ending or is this really bad? Thankfully, he was cleared. MRI showed no structural damage or anything like that, so he'll be okay. And then Lorenzo Carter back off IR. So there's the edge rusher help we were asking for, Adnan.
Yeah. Yeah. Lorenzo Carter needs to know better. You know, I mean, I'm happy he's, I hope that the concussion wasn't like, that severe. I'm hoping that it was just one of those like phantom IR stints because he was doing poorly beforehand. But man, this nobody's walking through that door when it comes to this edge rush. Like right now, who you got is who you got, and yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. Matthew Judon has been a massive bust, and the edge grouping is just as bad as I thought it would be back during camp when I was giving the warnings, and it's maybe even worse because I said they'd be, maybe a bottom 5 edge group, and right now they're the worst.
Yep.
So, can't get worse than 32nd at this point.
Yeah, that's very true. So we'll hope that they get a little bit better somewhere there, whether that's Lorenzo Carter coming back and kind of turning it on, or anybody really turning it on would be welcome at this point. Or maybe it's Damone Harris and Khalid Kareem, the practice squad guys, who both, did something when they saw the field. They did something, Adnan. So that's more than I can say for some people. So
yeah, I mean, Khalid Kareem was, he was a
effective run
surprise.
defender. Yeah, Damone Harris, did a couple things.
Let's see what we can do. Like I said, it's the good part of any injury is the next guy can step up, and you just never know. You never know who can step into that role and who can be a legitimate contributor. I mean, I remember last year, it was in the trade market, but Contavious Street came in and looked like a bit of a game breaker for a couple of games there.
Mm-hmm. It did indeed. So, and he's played better since coming back from his injury, since coming back from being benched, I guess I should say. So it's possible guys can adjust, and we'll just have to hope that keeps happening because it's been bad so far and disappointing to say the least. And it's gonna be a tough one this week, no kidding. This Broncos defense is good. Yeah. So
this game would have been tough if the Broncos weren't good.
Yeah.
And now it's much tougher than I thought it would be. Like, man, I hope that they surprise me, but it's not going to be easy this week, and I just hate the thought of going into the bye on a 2-game losing streak. Like, God, that Saints game
they needed to have that. They needed to sweep that gutter, Saints team, and They did not. So now they got to deal with the consequences of that. Um, and that includes, yours truly being pissed off. But it is what it is. Ultimately, you gotta win. You gotta pick up the pieces somewhere else, right? Which is what a lot of teams have to do. Things aren't always going to go your way. So let's see how resilient this team is. Let's see if they can bounce back in a tough road game and tough environment, and show us what they got. I think if they can have a good showing offensively against this Broncos defense, we're going to feel pretty good about this offense. Like, we've now seen them, have very widely, a lot of variety on offense. Some games they just struggle to score touchdowns. It's like they get the yards pretty much every game now. It's just they just don't put it in the end zone sometimes for a variety of reasons, penalties, bad sacks. Kirk Cousins fumbles every time that he's touched. I mean, there's whatever reasons you want, but we'll just hope for the best there. But I was also going to say that, I did, correctly say Jared versus Edge 1. I remember people he's been my Edge 1 for like 2 years when he didn't come out, and then
he's been
it's
really
like,
good.
oh yeah, actually it was right. It was Jared verse all along. That was actually the answer, even though the team clearly was going to go with Laiatu Latu. It seems, which I think he's been fine too. Not obviously as good as Verse, but just imagine if we had Verse on this team. I feel like it still wouldn't be a good pass rush, but it might be like average. It would be like significantly better, I think. But who knows? He might look like garbage on this team because this team just kills every pass rusher it touches, apparently. But
I mean, honestly, just having an average pass rush instead of like what we've seen would probably mean that the team is 8-2 or something.
Probably, yeah, probably. I mean, it's not like the Patriots have a great pass rush, and they put 9 sacks on the Bears, right? So the Falcons couldn't. I guarantee the Falcons played the Bears, they'd have like 2 sacks, even against that offensive line. So they just can't finish, man. It's bad, but the Falcons still very much. The good news, Falcons very much in control of their destiny. They have a cushion. They have earned that cushion, and that allows them to lose a couple games, like the game against the Saints. They've got a little margin of error. I would prefer them to keep the margin of error as big as possible, and that starts with beating a tough Broncos team on the road. So let's hope they can get it done. That'll give us, I think, a lot of faith in this offense going forward if they can do that. But Adnan, anything else you want to add tonight? I think we covered the run up to this week pretty well so far. So
yeah, I mean, let's go in there and let's go into the bye week on a very positive note. I'll feel a lot better about the rest of the season if they can go into Denver and get a win. Like I'm not saying by any means that the Broncos are this juggernaut team. I'm just saying that schedule wise, this is a really difficult spot to be in when it just comes to logistics, when it comes to purely like you have the bye week next week coming off the Saints game, going out west, altitude, all that stuff. And yeah, let's go in there and let's be on this post game show at 7 p.m. and remember it's a 4 p.m. kickoff. Let's be celebrating a victory, and let's go into that bye week, with the best possible vibes, because you lose this game and that division lead could start to dwindle very, very quickly.
Yeah, you got to stay on top of this, because the Bucks aren't going to go away. They're not just going to die. I know some people are hoping, they had all these injuries, maybe they'll just sort of flame out, and like they still could, but that team clearly, like the last 2 weeks, took the Chiefs and the 49ers basically to the absolute limit, which to me suggests that they are not going to roll over at any point this season. I guess we'll see how it goes, but we'll see how severe Tristan Wirfs' injury is. Obviously, that's a huge loss for them too. But ultimately, guys, thank you for hanging out with us here, talking about these Falcons. Best, as much as I've been hating on them, this is definitely the best Falcons team we've seen in, at least since 2017. Maybe 2018 without the injuries. That team could have been something too. Unfortunately, the injuries kind of just ravaged that defense entirely, and they were not as good as they could have been. But this team is at least average, which is better than they've been at any point the last 3 years for sure. Now we just need them to keep growing. And the 2016 Falcons to this point were pretty average looking too. And I'm not saying this is the 2016 team. I don't really think they're all that similar. Some people have referenced that because their records are somewhat similar. I don't really think this team is similar to the 2016 Falcons much at all. I do think that they have an opportunity to grow, just like the 2016 Falcons. I just think that their ceiling is probably like, top 5 instead of like one of the best offenses in NFL history. That's kind of where I'm at there. But, just trying. I don't want to put 2016 on this team. That just seems like why are we doing this? We'll just have the best season in franchise history when we're 7-5 or whatever it is. I'm sure that'll happen every time. It won't, for the record, but yeah.
That team was hanging like 35 on teams like it was nothing.
Yeah,
like I think they hung 40 on like 5 different opponents that year.
Yeah,
then they win into playoffs like that too. So
yeah, like I think this team, the Falcons, I think like this Broncos game, it's ultimately like not that important, but I think if they can win this game, it will give us a lot of hope that they are moving in the right direction. They are getting better. They're beating a tough team on the road where they have played well for the most part. I think this Saints game was kind of an aberration for them in that they have played better on the road for the most part. So, hopeful. And even if they lose this game, it's not catastrophic. Obviously, it's a non-conference game. It's one of the least important games on the schedule. So the fact that this one is like a tough setup right before your bye, 11 weeks into the season on the road in Denver, like ultimately, if you had to lose games, like this is one of the games you probably check off as like, we can lose this game. It would just be good for the vibes if they didn't, and obviously good for everything else if you don't lose this game. And it would give us a lot of faith, I think. So, let's see them get it done. I'm certainly going to be pulling for it. We'll break down the game in more detail on Friday on our game preview show, so look for that. And then, of course, we'll be back on Sunday evening after the afternoon game in Denver to break down Falcons versus Broncos, hopefully breaking down a big dub. But in the meantime, guys, thank you for joining us here on episode 308 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm Kevin Knight. He's Adnan Ikic. Please like, subscribe, leave that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Leave any comments if you got them. We'd love to hear them. In the meantime, check out Patreon if you want to support the show. It's patreon.com/Falcoholic Live, or join up with the channel memberships if you're interested in getting involved there. Otherwise, guys, check out thefalcoholic.com if you want that tremendous written content. We have assimilated Savion Mixon as well into the Falcoholic Collective. Shout out to Savion, who I think had his first articles published earlier this week. So I'm sure we'll be having him back on the show as an official member of the site here shortly as well. So congrats to him. Welcome to the group. And we'll continue bringing you guys all that terrific Falcons coverage all year long. Until next time, guys, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Falcoholic Live and the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. The show, of course, is brought to you by BetOnline. Until next time, guys, we'll see you. Have a great night, folks.